Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Piangelino from WSP, and today I will be presenting the new standards governance process. This session is targeted to the consultees in the new technical standard committees, which replace the technical project board. It is a mandatory training for TSC consultees, and it provides all the information you need to understand the new process, to engage, and also comment on relevant documents. I'll be delivering this training session with my colleague Adam Hill, who will be talking to you about the key enhancements made to the Highways England Technical Standards Enterprise System, the TSCS, to access documents and make comments. There are 4 objectives for today. I will present the changes to governance of technical documents to accommodate major revisions and incremental changes. And I will be talking to you extensively about categories of change A, B, C, and D. I'll present the new deliverables replacing the current ones in the QMR system. I'll present the new approach to consultation, replacing the technical project board called the Technical Standard Committee, TSC, and also the key responsibilities of the consultees. And I'll present what we are trying to achieve with the MCHW updates so that you will be able to understand why such changes have been made. By the end of today, hopefully, you'll have understood the objectives of the new governance process and how major revisions and incremental changes will be managed in the new governance process. Hopefully, you will also understood the scope and content of the new governance deliverables and how you can review and comment on them, how the technical standard committees function and your specific role as consultees in the TSC. You will also have understood why and how the MCHW is evolving so that you can make relevant comments. And finally, be ready to support the implementation of the new standards governance process for the DMRB and the MCHW updates as consultees. The agenda for today is provided on this slide. I'm going to start with an introduction, and then I will cover the new standard governance process. I will provide an overview of the new process. I will then clarify the different categories of change, A, B, C, and D, the new governance deliverables, which are going to replace the QMR system, the new consultation process, the technical standards committee process, replacing the technical project board. Adam will then present how to access cards to review documents and make comments. And then I will give an overview of some of the key aspects for you to know about the MCHW update program. And then I will finish with some of the key responsibilities of technical consultees. And I will then draw some final remarks and conclusions. Let me start with the introduction. In this session, I'll cover the safety moment and also will explain why we are doing this, why the new governance process has been introduced. Our safety moment for today is on stress awareness, the 30-day challenge. According to behavioral scientists, it takes 30 days to form a new habit or break an old one. So let's challenge ourselves next month and make just a single change to reap the benefits for a lifetime. Trying to change too many things at once generally sets ourselves up for failure, but if we do just one thing differently, it could have a fantastic positive impact in the long term. It could be anything that is relevant, like taking a daily walk or spending more time reading a book, or writing down one positive experience that happened to you every day. So if we commit to working on our chosen activity every day in the next month, by the end of it, we'll have established a great new habit that will help us feel better in mind and body. Let me now explain why we are doing this. So after the successful delivery of the future DMRB project in RIS1, now in RIS2, Highways England has got an obligation to keep the DMRB up to date. If we assume a 5-year review cycle, overall about 20% of the documents should be updated each year. But to meet this target, the rate of update should be increased by a factor of 5 because historic data shows that in the past, only around 5.7% of documents were reviewed each year. So a new streamlined governance process, is essential to complete the evolution of the DMRB efficiently and effectively. And it will also be relevant to update the MCHW in parallel and subsequently keep the MCHW up to date after its overall refresh. The second reason why we are doing this is because it is highly desirable. Workshops held within SCS in Highways England over the last couple of years show that governance of document development is considered a cumbersome and unduly bureaucratic process, often disproportionate to the type of changes being made to technical documents. There are many stakeholders involved in consultation in particular, and sometimes the expectations of what they should be providing in terms of contribution in the consultation is not entirely clear. And finally, QMR governance deliverables sometimes are produced at milestones when the information is not yet clearly available, and there is also duplication of effort and content. And therefore, there's a specific demand for a better process. So let's start with the first item in the agenda. In this session, I'll provide an overview of the new standards governance process, and I will cover the role of governance for technical standards, the principles underpinning the new governance system, and I'll provide an overview of the key changes. Technical standards normally fulfill three key roles. They have to be technically correct and compatible with other standards. They have to be compatible with the policies and objectives of the Highways England business as well as the devolved administration's businesses, because technical standards we are talking about today are the standards applied and relevant to the UK highways network. When I say compatibility with policies and objectives, what I mean is also in terms of commercial and operational routines, affordability in terms of whole life cost benefits and short and medium term impacts, and also legislative obligations. And the third point, the third role of technical standards is that they have to provide evidence that due diligence has been applied when making technical decisions, and there is also a recorded rationale for why requirements and advice has changed or any additional requirements or advice have been introduced. So in terms of principles of the new governance process, the first one is of course that the new governance process needs to help the overseeing organizations to fulfill their obligations and manage their risks. And to do so, there are a few specific principles we have identified. So first of all, the new governance process aims to support the technical standards remaining up to date. So we don't want the new system to be as a blocker to keep standards up to date. The process also has to be proportionate to the changes being introduced, whilst also being robust. We also want to have deliverables produced at the right time in the process, because as I said before, sometimes this is not the case, and we want to avoid the duplication of information and of course of effort. Importantly, the new governance process needs to have consultation for any technical change prior to approval to publish, so consultation is a key step in the process. And we also want to capture the rationale and justification for any changes with a record of who was involved in decision making. On this slide, I'm going to summarize the key changes that we have made to the governance process and essentially what we will cover today. So overall, there are three items I will focus my attention on: categories of change, governance stages, and governance deliverables. In terms of categories of change, I will be talking to you about 4 categories of change, A, B, C, and D, So depending on the type of change being made to a document, that specific development will be associated with the category of change. And depending on the category of change, the governance stages will vary, as I will explain in the next session. But for the purpose of today, I will focus my attention primarily on 3 governance stages which are relevant to US consultees: the new document development planning stage, the consultation stage, and then the approval stage. And finally, I will be talking to you about the governance deliverables. And again, I will focus my attention only on specific governance deliverables which are relevant to you, because you will be reviewing them and providing your comments on such documents. And these are highlighted in bold, so the document development plan, impact assessment report, draft document, change log, and close change summary. Before going into the details of the new governance process, let me clarify some of the key terms that I'll be using in this presentation. Firstly, TPB, Technical Project Board, will be replaced by Technical Standard Committee, TSC, and similarly TPB Chair and TPB Secretary will be replaced by TSC Chair and TSC Secretary respectively. The concept of document ownership is an important one, because this concept has been entirely reviewed following the change that Housing England has had in 2015 from executive body to government-owned company. To mitigate the risk of individual liability, extensive and more robust governance has been established, as will be presented today, including the new TSC process and enhanced approval and authorization stages. In addition to that, it was considered also appropriate to change the title of document owner to technical author. So we will no longer talk in terms of document ownership, but what we are going to do now is to talk more in terms of roles and responsibilities, and we have set clear roles and responsibilities for technical authors, TAG, the TSC chair, and the TSC as a collective. The last term that I'd like to introduce is the term Standards Review Program, which is replacing the Standards Forward Program, the SFP. So when you will go into JIRA now, you will no longer find SFP as the Standard Forward Program, but the SRP, the Standard Review Program. The last term that I'm going to present is the Technical Standard Enterprise System, the TSCS, and I will be mentioning this several times in this presentation. For those of you who are not familiar with it, the TSCS is the Highways England cloud-based software system comprising 6 key components, but for the purpose of today, it is really useful for you to know 2 of them, because I'll be referring to these 2 throughout the training. These are the Collaborative Authoring and Review System, CARS, to develop technical standards and also to provide comments on them, and the Program Management Tool, JIRA. You'll be using CARS to make comments, and JIRA provides the workflow for the governance steps I'll be presenting in the next session. The new governance process will be proportionate to the type of changes being made, and to do so we have made a clear distinction between major revisions and incremental changes. Major revisions of a document cover new technical policy, rewrite of the document, and development of a new document. Incremental changes instead cover specific changes made to requirement clauses, shall and must clauses, specific changes made to advice clauses, should and may clauses, and changes to notes, typically can clauses and spelling mistakes. But in any case, changes in category D do not affect requirements or advice content. So any change made to requirements and advice clause, and I want to emphasize here, any change made to requirements and advice will be processed through categories B and C, not category D, unless it is a spelling mistake. So think, for example, the addition of a comma or the addition of a few words into a requirement. This can actually make a big impact on the meaning of the sentence and change the meaning or the scope of the document sometimes entirely. So it needs to be very careful on classifying the different categories of change. So taking this approach, so being very strict on what kind of change belongs to which category, helps remove ambiguity as well as subjectivity when choosing between categories. So for example, if there is an error to a formula which is introduced in a requirement clause, this will be processed as a category B change, not category D. Only spelling mistakes in requirements and advice clauses will be processed as category D. From a practical point of view, the technical author proposes the category of change at the start of the process, and then the TSC chair will assign the category of change in JIRA based on his or her understanding of the proposal made. Such choice is then confirmed at a specific stage in the governance process, because there may be changes made throughout the document development, which will then change the category of change. Importantly, when there are multiple changes to be made, the category chosen shall be the most onerous. So, for example, between a category A and a category B change, it will be eventually a category A change, the most onerous category. And what is also relevant to remember is that the choice of the category of change does affect the governance steps that are followed, which I will present in a second, and also the version numbering of the published document, which I will also present. There are two main objectives for the enhanced governance steps. Firstly, to apply a proportionate approach to the level of governance required, and secondly, to avoid unnecessary and wasteful processes. On this slide, I have summarized the governance steps for categories A, B, C, and D. There are 9 steps for category A, which comprises major revisions, and you can see that moving from category A to category D change, the governance steps decrease. For categories B and C, the stage DDP is missing, whereas for category D, authorization, DDP, and notification are missing. But importantly, the effort required by technical authors and TSC consultees to work on and review categories B, C changes is going to be significantly less than for category A changes. Because for category A, the work is about major revisions, so for example, the development of a new document, whereas for categories B and C, it may be about a couple of clauses to be drafted and reviewed. And category D has been further streamlined with consultation involving content specialists only. But I'll come back to the consultation process in session 4. There are 3 stages which are relevant to consultees, and these are DDP, document development planning, consultation, and approval. And I'll be giving details of them for different categories of change over the next few slides. Before moving on to the DDP stage, I just want to clarify that for national variations, and here I'm talking about national application annexes, for example, the governance rules of the relevant overseeing organization will be followed. The document development plan stage is when the DDP is developed. I will come back to this deliverable in the next session, but for now, what is relevant for you to understand is that the technical author develops the DDP for category A only, which is then reviewed by the TSC chair. Once the TSC chair is satisfied that the document is complete, the DDP will be shared with the consultees so that you can see the type of document development. Consultees are not expected to comment on the DDP because it's provided for information only. However, should you have any comments or queries on the DDP, please contact the technical author. Once again, the DDP is relevant to category of change A only, not to all document developments. Once the category of change has been confirmed, the TSC consultation can start, and I'll cover the new consultation process in detail in session 5. At high level, the TSC chair leads the consultation, taking a collaborative and inclusive approach and ensuring that all consultees are engaged and provide their comments in a timely manner. Before starting, the TSC Secretariat will share the following documents with the consultees: the draft document, the pre-consultation impact assessment report, a closed change summary, which contains background information, and the change log against the old clauses, which is only relevant for the future MCHW program. I'll cover these deliverables in detail in the next session. You, as consultees, will review the documents and provide relevant comments within the set timescale. At the end of the consultation process, the technical author will review the comments received. And if a new consultation is needed, the TSC chair will liaise with the technical author to initiate a new consultation. But otherwise, if the TSC has completed the review and provided comments, the technical author will finalize the draft document for approval and will complete the post-consultation impact assessment report and the consultation report. And I'll cover all these deliverables in detail in the next session. The approval stage has been rationalized by including all parties responsible for the approval of the document in one stage. These are the TSC chair, who will review the relevant documentation. If satisfied, approve it. The content specialist will review the draft document, but only for MDD compliance, and they will also review the impact assessment report and the consultation report for completeness. And this is done so that the divisional director and the heads of standards of the overseeing organizations can review the documentation and, if satisfied, approve it. I also want to flag that the divisional director is involved in this process only for category A change, not for the other changes. So over the last few slides, I have been talking to you about the category A changes. For changes to requirements or advice belonging to categories B and C, the key differences with category A are that the DDP is not needed, as you can see on the screen, and drafting work happens at clause level rather than document level. And finally, there is no divisional director approval needed, only by the TSC chair and the heads of standards of the overseeing organizations. For changes to notes and spelling mistakes, the differences with category A are the same as for categories B and C, with the addition of the following. The consultation process will involve the content specialists only due to the nature of the changes. There is no authorization expected by the Chief Highways Engineers, and no notification will be needed. And this makes the governance process of Category D changes significantly streamlined. So to conclude, there is a decreasing level of effort required when moving from Category of Change A to Category D, as you can see on the screen and has been presented over the last few slides. Earlier in this session, I said that the choice of the category of change affects the governance steps that will be followed and the version numbering of the published document. I did cover the governance steps, so now I'm going to presenting the new document version numbering. The new DMRB documents, and in the MCHW in future, will have a new document version numbering, which is associated with the category of change. At the moment, the DMRB contains the document code and the number, for example, CS455, followed by revision 0, revision 1, and so on. And this aims to clarify the version of the document. In future, documents will have a new document version numbering, replacing revision 0, revision 1, etc., as shown on this slide. The document code and number will be followed by a 3-digit number. The first digit is associated with the category A change, for example, a major rewrite. The second digit is associated with changes to requirements. The third digit is associated with changes to advice and notes and spelling mistakes. The new document version numbering will make it easy for users to identify the type of changes that have been introduced in a document update, and therefore make it easier to manage which standards are applicable to a project. The TSCS will automatically associate a version number to a document, depending on the category of change, and following the approach that normally is used in version releases for software. So there's a child-parent relationship for version number, rebaselining when the number goes up. And you can see on the left-hand side of the screen an example of that for CS455, which starts with version 100, and then it goes up because, for example, there's a spelling mistake. And then it will go up to 110 because there's a change to a requirement, and will then go up to 200 because there is a policy change or a major rewrite of the document. To summarize some key takeaways for consultees, we have made a clear distinction between major revisions belonging to category A and incremental changes belonging to categories B, C, and D. So you will see that the documents that will come through for your review will either be associated with one of these categories. The governance steps have been enhanced and streamlined depending on the category of change. So we no longer have a one-size-fits-all approach, but the level of governance is going to be proportionate to the type of changes being made. Technical consultees will be involved, consultees in general will be involved to review the document development plan for category A only, and during the consultation process for categories A, B, and C. And a new document version numbering will be associated with the category of change. In this session, I'm going to cover the enhanced governance deliverables, which replace the QMR system. On this slide, I have listed all deliverables which are currently part of the QMR system. Firstly, we've got the QMR1, which is produced by the technical author at the start of the process. It does require useful information, particularly on document impacts, but these aspects may not be fully understood at the start of the process. It is then followed by the document development plan, which was introduced during the DMRB update program as an optional deliverable. And the DDP was well received and made DMRB reviews more efficient. The QMR2 instead is compiled after consultation. It asks for useful information, particularly on document impacts, but it can be unwieldy for small changes. There are also several peripheral templates to be filled in, like GG104 risk assessment or the equality impact assessment. They are currently attached to the final submission for authorization. And finally, we've got the draft document, the change log done against the old document, and the background commentary, which is developed against the new document. You, as consultees in the TPB process, are currently expected to provide comments on the draft document, change log, background commentary, but do not have access to the QMR1, QMR2, and the other deliverables. With the new governance deliverables, what we wanted to do was effectively to eliminate duplication of information or content provided at the wrong stage in the process. We also wanted to apply a proportionate approach to the level of documentation required, considering that we have different types of change, and we don't want to have deliverables which are unwieldy for small changes. We wanted to improve the commenting process and keep a complete audit trail of comments, decisions, and changes made as a result of consultation, and at the same time to collect useful reportable data. And finally, automate the production of information through the TSCS where appropriate. The current deliverables have been rationalized as follows. The QMR1 content has been split into the JIRA form to enter the standard review program, the document development plan, and the pre-consultation impact assessment, which is part 1 in the impact assessment report. The document development plan continues to be the DDP, and it is now been made mandatory for Category A only. It is shared with consultees for information so that you can have an understanding of the type of change being made and the relevant category. The QMR2 is now part of the post-consultation impact assessment, which is part 2 in the impact assessment report. You will be commenting on the pre-consultation impact assessment, and I'll cover in detail these aspects in the next few slides. GG104 risk assessment, the equality impact assessment, sustainable development, customer service, they are all part of the impact assessment report. The draft document continues to be a key deliverable, and you will be able to comment on it. The change log will be developed for the MCHW update program only, so it is not needed for other document developments, and this is provided to you for information. The background commentary will be provided through a new deliverable called the Close Change Summary, which I'll present you in a few slides. And the consultation report, finally, is a new deliverable produced by the technical author, which provides key information on the consultation and areas agreed to be explored in future work. And again, I'll cover it in the next few slides. So let me now present each deliverable in detail. For documents in Category A only, the Document Development Plan (DDP) is now a mandatory deliverable. This is completed by the technical author, reviewed by the TSC chair for completeness and clarity, and it is then shared with consultees for information so that you can have a preliminary understanding of the proposed changes. The key aspects covered in the DDP are summary of drafting needs and approach in Section 4, interfaces with other documents and therefore the level of coordination required in Section 5, and high-level review of the document at section level, and the proposed outline document structure in Section 7. It also presents key risks and opportunities from the proposed document development or update. The DDP is developed in Word and it is then shared to the consultees as a PDF. The draft document continues to be a key deliverable drafted in CARS. For those of you who are not familiar with CARS, this is the online collaborative authoring and review system that contains all MDD drafting rules and is used to draft and review documents. Adam will be presenting in session 6 how to access CARS and how to make comments when you're reviewing documents and specific clauses. The changelog is only relevant when dealing with existing MCHW documents, which will be reviewed in the MCHW update program. This is effectively the RIS2 commitment. And the changelog is drafted by the technical author and provides the rationale for the changes being made to an existing document, as well as the location of the clause when moved. I'm talking about the specific section, for example, so that for easy future retrieval, this information can then be used. And consultees will be able to access the changelog for information so that you can see what happened to the old document. The Close Change Summary is a new deliverable relevant to all categories of change. This provides the old clauses, the new clauses, and the background commentary as shown on this slide with the blue arrows. The Close Change Summary is automatically generated by CARS to aid the identification of the specific clauses that have changed, and it is then shared with the consultees as a PDF for information. The Impact Assessment Report is a key deliverable of the new standards governance process. It contains all impacts covered in the old QMR system, plus additional impacts and content, which make it a comprehensive document easier to complete by the technical author and also to share and review by consultees. The report contains 3 parts covering pre-consultation content, post-consultation content, and the implementation plan. The pre-consultation part provides detailed information on the impact of the document on the 7 areas identified on the slide. I'm talking about health and safety and well-being, equality, diversity and inclusion, carbon management, sustainable development and good design, customer satisfaction, commercial impact, other impacts, and innovation. The post-consultation impact assessment provides instead concise information highlighting impacts that have changed as a result of the consultation, as you can see on this slide. So effectively, each of the sections identified in the pre-consultation impact assessment now only contains very high-level information which only covers cases where the impact has changed compared to the during the consultation process. And finally, there is the implementation plan, which covers dissemination plan and implementation requirements. The style and format of the report has been entirely enhanced by introducing drop-down lists and free text fields, as you can see on the screen, for easy search and reporting. The impact assessment report contains 3 enhanced templates covering health and safety, equality, diversity and inclusion, and other impacts. Enhancements can be seen in the streamlined content and better, more consistent style and presentation. I'll cover each of these in a bit more detail over the next few slides. An extract of the health and safety and well-being impact assessment is provided on this slide. The assessment will continue to be undertaken following the GG 104 risk assessment approach and the 3 elements of planning, safety risk assessment, and how to document and maintain the safety risk assessment process. We have enhanced the formatting and provided a style which is now consistent with the other impacts. There aren't major changes to the equality, diversity and inclusion impact assessment other than enhance the formatting and consistent style with other impacts. The only point I'd like to make here is that there are 2 components of the impact assessment: screening and full impact assessment. And the full equality impact assessment is undertaken by the technical author only when required as identified in the screening stage. On this slide, you can see the content of other impacts, and again, there are no changes made to what is required. We are asking for information on policy implications, for example, legal, contractual, construction implications, which already existed in the previous QMR system. What we have done has been to rationalize the formatting and make it consistent with the other impact assessment sections. There are also 3 new templates covering carbon assessment, which needs to be undertaken in conjunction with sustainable development and good design assessment, customer satisfaction, and innovation. So let's start with carbon management, sustainable development, and good design. Highways England is mandated by the license to focus on 3 areas related to carbon, sustainable development and good design. First, Highways England needs to ensure the best practicable outcomes across its activities while working in the context of sustainable development. Highways England has also to develop approaches for the construction, maintenance and operation of the highways network that are consistent with the government's plans for a low carbon future. And the third duty contained in the license is that in exercising its functions, Highways England must have due regard to the relevant principles and guidance on good design. To do that, technical authors are now responsible of drafting specific content covering these 3 areas and I'm presenting you the template to assess the impact of these in the next few slides. A completely new template has been introduced for carbon assessment. Technical authors will undertake a screening of carbon aspects first, followed by a full assessment if the outcome of the screening says that the assessment is needed. The full assessment is based on the carbon management hierarchy: build nothing, build less, build clever, and build efficiently. And there may be wider sustainability and good design benefits from applying this hierarchy as well, and this is for the technical authors to consider. There are no major changes to the Sustainable Development and Good Design Assessment that was previously undertaken. The approach is the same, with the screening first, followed by the full assessment when needed. We have improved formatting and style, as you can see on the screen. The other new templates I'm going to introduce cover customer satisfaction and innovation. So let me start with customer satisfaction first. The new customer satisfaction template will help technical authors to assess how the implementation of new documents or new clauses impact on the customer experience of road users, road workers, and others using the overseeing organization's network. The template applies to the 4 overseeing organizations, and we have used the Highways England customer service strategy to identify high-level aspects to be addressed in the impact assessment report. This is a simple table. There are only 6 questions with yes or no answers, and we've also requested the provision of evidence or examples to validate the responses given, both whether they are positive or negative. The questions require the technical author to think about the impact that the implementation of a document may have on customer experience, including a well-maintained and safer network, better information provisions for customers, and better end-to-end experience for customers and improved journey times. The last new template I'm going to mention is related to innovation. The overseeing organizations need to keep innovating to improve experiences on the road while getting people where they need to be safely and reliably. This is also a specific challenge from the transport infrastructure efficiency strategy. Standards can constrain or inhibit innovation, but they do not need to, and they can have an explicit role, active role, in providing a framework for developing innovative solutions. So based on these considerations, innovation is now one of the focus areas of the technical standards committees. And to keep a record of the opportunities of innovation that can be realized by implementing DMRB and MCHW documents, a specific section has been introduced in the impact assessment report covering innovation. It is a very simple table, as you can see on this slide, one statement to be provided, but the information that will be collected through this template will feed into the wider innovation repository of Highways England and the devolved administrations as relevant. To help technical authors to identify opportunities for innovation through standards development, as well as help consultees to judge the content provided, we have identified some of the factors which effectively provide a framework for innovation. This is about setting clear outcomes and balancing effectively method-based and performance-based requirements, thus achieving the right level of balance between high-level outcomes and specific methods. It's also useful to keep standards up to date and codifying existing technology to create demand pool for new practices and technology, and also introducing new requirements that force the industry to develop new solutions to comply with them. And here I'm thinking about, for example, current trends in construction like net zero and off-site manufacturing. So far, I have been talking about enhanced and new templates. Now, in terms of commercial impact assessment instead, No changes have been made to the content, other than style and formatting to align with the other sections. However, over the next few months, specific work will be undertaken to explore the improvements that can be made to better estimate cost implications of document development, both in the short, medium and long term. The outcome of this work will be incorporated into the new impact assessment report in the near future, and this will also be a key source to identify the efficiency and cost benefits associated with document developments, which will be used for the wider SCS efficiency target and register for RIS2. The last aspect that I'd like to illustrate is how you can comment on the impact assessment report. We have developed an Excel template where you can add your comments, which is shown on this slide. You will be able to add your name, select the membership category, editorial, technical, concurrence, select your organization, and also the type of concurrence consultee you are, for example, major projects or operations or commercial. You can also add the document code and title below. In the table, you have to select the section you're providing feedback on, for example, health and safety or commercial, and then your comment. So please add the multiple comments related to the same section in multiple rows. This will help the technical author to reply to each comment individually. You will provide your own comments to the Technical Standard Committee Secretary. The technical author will then compile all responses received into one document, will review the feedback, and if needed, reply to your remarks. All relevant information on the impact of the document will then be collected in one place and will help draft the post-consultation impact assessment based on comments received. To finish off the presentation of the impact assessment report, I just want to flag again that what I've presented up to now was about the pre-consultation impact assessment, which is part 1 in the report. And the pre-consultation impact assessment covers detailed information on all impacts. The post-consultation impact assessment instead provides concise information highlighting the impacts that have changed as a result of the consultation. The consultation report is the last of the governance deliverables. You will not have access to this document because it is developed by the technical author after the consultation process. The report is made up of 2 parts, the main text and Annex A. The main text will contain basic information on the document, a list of invited members and who participated, a clarification of the number of consultations undertaken and the reason for having multiple consultation processes, the areas agreed to be done in future work, for example, relevant to R&D, and finally, key comments from informed parties. I'll explain the distinction between consultees and informed parties in the next session. Annex A, instead, is generated from CARS for each document section and will contain all comments raised during the consultation for audit trail. This slide summarizes the enhanced governance deliverables replacing the QMR system, how to access them, and their relevance for different categories of change. There are 3 key takeaways from this session. First of all, the QMR deliverables have been rationalized and replaced by enhanced governance documents. Such documents relevant to consultees are the document development plan, which is provided to you for information, the draft document, which is provided for your comments, change log and closed change summary, which are provided for information only, and the impact assessment report that I presented extensively today, where the section covering pre-consultation aspect is for your comments. The commenting process has also been improved to keep a complete audit trail of comments, decisions, and changes made as a result of consultation. In this session, I'm going to cover the new consultation process replacing the technical project board, which we call a technical standard committee process. There are three objectives for the new consultation process. First, to maximize the value of the time given by those engaging with document development and incentivize attendance. We value people's time and also understand how busy you all are, so we want to make sure that the process runs as smoothly as possible and ensure that people see the value of their contribution. Connected with that, the new consultation process aims to ensure that input from stakeholders is timely and mitigate the risk of delays. And finally, the consultation process aims to ensure that the content is reviewed for technical correctness and acceptability, to avoid document development that are not aligned strategically. Technical Project Boards, TPBs, have been renamed to Technical Standard Committees, TSCs, to recognize that they are not project boards, but rather committees dealing with standards. Each discipline will now have one TSC, as listed on the right-hand side of the screen, with relevant consultees. The classification of consultees is then provided in the next slide. We have made a clear distinction between different types of consultees: editorial, technical, and concurrence. Editorial consultees are responsible for ensuring MDD compliance. I'm talking about the content specialists in TAG. Technical consultees are responsible for commenting on technical matters and check technical accuracy and acceptability. They are typically representatives of SES technical specialists and technical leads from the devolved administrations. Concurrence consultees are responsible for checking acceptability and affordability for strategic alignment with other business needs. They have been classified in essential and additional. Essential concurrence consultees are listed here and include the TAG, major projects, operations, commercial and procurement, and health and safety. Based on the pre-consultation impact assessment report, the TSC chair shall determine whether consultees covering equality, diversity and inclusion, sustainable development, and customer experience are essential for that particular document development work. And in such a case, the TSC chair shall notify the relevant team accordingly. But in all cases, the pre-consultation impact assessment reports shall be made available to these teams to sample and provide comments. Additional concurrence consultees are also identified, so for example, members from other SES directorates or the HE legal staff, IT staff, and so on. But there is also another important aspect is worth mentioning here in terms of participation. And this is that the TSC consultees should represent the whole division, directorate, or organization, and should not just give their own personal opinion. So it is also preferable to have one consultee per area rather than multiple representatives. We have also made a clear distinction between consultees and informed parties. Consultees review the change and provide feedback, even if that is just to confirm they do not object. They represent the interest of the overseeing organizations overall, whereas informed parties review the change, but no response is expected because they are inherently different from consultees. Depending on the category of change, parties may be consulted or informed, as you can see in the table. The additional informed parties, listed at the bottom of the table, will be informed for all categories of change as relevant. You may also decide to treat selected informed parties as consultees, as long as their comments help develop documents which aligns with the strategic goals of the overseeing organizations and which are relevant to the motorway and all-purpose trunk road network. Documents will be made available to all consultees during a set consultation period. The term consultation period refers to the period where a document is made available to the TSC for commenting, not the entire review process. It excludes peer review, post-consultation review of comments, and potential future consultations. It is just the time taken to run the consultation from when the TSC chair initiated the process until the end of the review period. Depending on the category of change, the consultation period will vary from a maximum of 2 weeks for category D changes up to 6 weeks for a category A change, which is an indicative time. These timescales align with current experience in running consultations. We do recommend to follow the periods identified on this slide. However, the TSC chair can agree extensions with the TSC members, but importantly, the end of the consultation needs to be agreed and communicated at the start of the process with all consultees. To ensure that the consultation runs as smoothly as possible and to mitigate the risks of delays, the TSC chair, supported by the secretary, will send advance notice of the consultation to all TSC members. All consultees are then expected to communicate leave, absences and other commitments to the TSC chair and secretary in a timely manner. The TSC chair and secretary will monitor potential delays, using a preferred approach. For example, they may set short weekly calls or stand-up calls to monitor the progress. And consultation periods will be monitored to identify any blockers and put in place relevant mitigation measures. There may be multiple consultations. However, the aim is to minimize their number as far as possible by developing documents of the right quality and completeness. It is also worth saying that outside the TSC consultation process, there may be other engagement activities, early industry discussions. So, for example, the technical author may organize meetings before the document development plan. For example, the inception and development strategy meeting to gather preliminary views. And there are also early discussions with peer reviewers, which are initiated by the technical author during the drafting stage. And importantly, at least one peer review needs to be undertaken before consultation. To conclude this presentation on the new TSC process, let me now present who the approvers and authorizers are. So overall, all categories of change will need approval given by the TSC chair and the heads of standards of the different overseeing organizations. Divisional directors' approval is expected for category of change A only. Authorization by the Chief Highways Engineers is needed for categories A, B, and C, not for category D, and can be delegated to internal staff following internal overseeing organizations rules. To summarize the key takeaways, the technical standards committees are now replacing the technical project boards, and there will be one TSC established for each discipline. We have made a distinction between editorial, technical, and concurrence consultees, as well as a distinction between consultees and informed parties. The role of peer reviewers has been clarified. So peer reviewers are involved during drafting before consultation. They are not consultees, strictly speaking. The duration of the consultation process depends on the category of change and needs to be agreed and communicated at the start of the process to all parties. And consultees will also will have to communicate leave, absences and other commitments to the TSC chair and secretary in a timely manner. I'm now handing over to Adam Hill to present CARS and explain how to access CARS to review documents and make comments.
Hello. I'm Adam Hill, and I am the Product Owner Representative on behalf of Highways England for the Technical Standards Enterprise System. Over the next few slides, I'm going to outline how you'll be using CARS, Highways England's collaborative authoring and review system, to review and comment on documents in your role as a consultee. Assuming that you may not have used CARS before, we are going to cover accessing CARS, document versions, navigating the document, background commentary, discussions, reviewing discussions, and help and guidance. As a gentle reminder, all document feedback is to be entered in CARS. Anyone who is a consultee can be given access to CARS via a role within the system called the reviewer. Authors within CARS can easily manage reviewers for their documents and, if necessary, create new users within the system. If you have not used the system before, you'll be invited to CARS by an email similar to that shown on this slide. Upon receiving the email, click on the link provided to reset your password and complete your registration. Enter your email address when prompted on the CARS password reset page. Check that your name is correct on the Account tab, then click on the Password tab to provide and confirm a new password. You will receive an on-screen confirmation when your password has been updated. It is most likely that you will have been provided with a link to a document to review within CARS. Alternatively, you can access the system using the URL https://futuredmrb.co.uk. If you are not using a direct document link, once you have accessed CARS, you will be presented with the All Documents view. As a quick top tip, you can click on the CARS logo to return to this view at any time. If you have been assigned to lots of documents, you can type part of the document code or title into the Filter Documents search box, shown here with the number 1 next to it, to quickly find the document you are after. Click on the relevant document row within the list to open that document. Now, if the document you're after is not listed in the All Documents view, please contact the document's lead author to be given access. As reviewers within CARS, consultees can only view versions of documents. These are snapshots of the document at a point in time. Upon accessing a document, you will be prompted to select the version you wish to review. Multiple versions may exist for the same document. Please do ensure that you review the correct version as instructed. Click on the version row to open the version. Once you have accessed the document, use the navigation pane provided on the left-hand side of the screen to access the sections available. Clicking on a section title within the navigation pane will load the section. Please note this may take a few seconds for larger sections, particularly if the section has lots of figures. The section within the navigation pane will expand to show headings within the section. These can be clicked on to quickly jump to specific content. This is very helpful when you have long sections. Over on the other side of the screen, icons are provided which open side panels for additional information and functionality. The top icon opens the background commentary pane. This can be used to review any comments the author has provided against the selected clause, i.e. the clause that you are currently reviewing. Clauses are selected by clicking on them. The current selected clause is indicated by an adjacent blue bar as shown at the bottom of this slide. The next icon down opens the discussions pane. This is the key functionality for you as a consultee. This is where you can review existing feedback on each clause, both unresolved and resolved, or you can provide new feedback. To provide new feedback, simply click Start the new discussion, enter the text of your feedback where the discussion placeholder is, confirm whether your feedback is general, editorial, or technical in nature. Confirm in what capacity you are providing feedback, i.e. as a technical consultee, a commercial or operations representative. Once you have completed your feedback, click Submit to save it. You can click Cancel at any time if you do not want to provide feedback. You will naturally want to know if your feedback has been commented on or resolved. A simple view is provided to see the status of all your feedback items in CARS. Access the All Documents. Remember that you can click on the CARS logo to do this. Then click My Discussions towards the top right of the list. Alternatively, you can use the direct URL https://futuredmrb.co.uk/my-discussions. All documents against which you have raised discussions are listed. Simply click on the document name. Available versions will be shown with a simple summary of the number of discussions raised. The example here shows 0 out of 1 resolved. Select a version and then a summary of the discussion counts by section is provided. Clicking on an individual section will also show your discussions and their current status. Now, the last few slides have hopefully shown you that it is straightforward to access documents and provide feedback within CARS. If you do need further assistance, then there is extensive help and guidance available on the CARS help pages. These can be accessed from within the application. There is a link at the top right hand of the screen, or you can use the URL https://help.futuredmrb.co.uk. The help pages include FAQs and links to videos providing clear step-by-step guidance on how to use many of the features in CARS. Thank you for your time. I will now pass you back to Mary Pia.
Thank you, Adam, for presenting how to access CARS to review documents and make comments. I'm now covering the vision for the future MCHW and some key practical implications, including the new structure of MCHW volumes, the new style and format of the specification for highways works and the notes for guidance, volumes 1 and 2, and the presentation of national variations. So hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of what we are trying to achieve with the MCHW updates. To drive the future MCHW, we have defined a vision statement, which is on this slide. The future MCHW will provide clear and unambiguous requirements and instructions compatible with modern control forms and future construction practices. So this vision statement covers clarity of requirements for constructors and instructions for the specifier. It also covers the compatibility with modern control forms, control neutrality in particular, and also compatibility with future construction practices, which includes decarbonization, customer focus, digitalization, for example. There are 10 practical implications of the previous vision statement. Firstly, the MCHW will be developed and hosted digitally, which will also enable machine readability. There is a new MCHW volume structure. Volume 1 covering the specification for highways works and Volume 2 covering the notes for guidance will be fully updated and with a new look and style. Volume 3 containing drawings will be removed, and the drawings will be fully updated and moved to the relevant DMRB and SHW documents, but also the archived versions of the old drawings will be made available. Volume 4, covering the bill of quantities, will be fully updated by the Highways England commercial team. Volume 5, covering specialist activities, will be removed and relevant content migrated to Volumes 1, 2 and 4 as relevant. Volume 6 will also be removed and relevant content will migrate to the DMRB and the health and safety documents as relevant. We'll have contra-neutral clauses. We will introduce nationally determined requirements and sections to cover national variations. And overall, the final goal will be to move towards full compatibility between MCHW and DMRB. For the purpose of this presentation, I will focus my attention on the 3 areas identified on the slide in red. So I will explain the new structure of the MCHW volumes, the new style and format of volumes 1 and 2, and also how national variations will be introduced. Let me start with the new MCHW volume structure. The MCHW content will be allocated within the matrix of technical requirements. This was introduced during the DMRB work program to allocate the documents, the DMRB documents. For those of you who are not familiar with this matrix, overall, all the DMRB documents were allocated based on the relevant life cycle stage and the discipline. And most of the DMRB documents ended up into the general information, appraisal and design. Some of them ended up in the maintenance and operation, inspection and disposal. The MCHW documents will be allocated under a new row, contract preparation row, covering the instruction for specifier documents, which I will present in a second, and the specification for highways works documents under the construction row. The structure of the MCHW volumes, the current structure, is presented on this slide. There are 7 volumes overall. We start with volume 0, which contains the implementation requirements and some general information. And then we have volume 1 with the specification for highways works, notes for guidance in volume 2, highways construction details and drawings in volume 3. The bill of quantities contained in volume 4, then we have specialist activities in volume 5 and some requirements covering diversionary works and health and safety content in volume 6. This structure will change completely in the new MCHW. In the future, we'll only have 3 places where information will be provided. We're going to have the specification for highways works documents, instructions for specifier documents, and bill of quantities content. So the SHW documents will end up in the construction row, as I explained before, looking at the matrix of technical requirements, whereas the instruction for specifier documents will be provided in the new contract preparation row. There is still discussion around the bill of quantities and where it will be provided, either within the MCHW or into separate documentation. But for the purpose of this training and for your role as consultees, it's important to understand where the content will be allocated to essentially have an awareness of what's going on in the MCHW. So broadly speaking, within the specification for highways works documents, you will find most of the volume 1 content, as well as some content taken from volume 0, 2, 3 and 5. In the instruction for specifier documents, we'll end up most of the content from volume 2, the notes for guidance, but also some content from volume 0 and volume 5 as relevant. The bill of quantities will contain volume 4 and some of the volume 5 content. But there is also another important point to be made here, which is about the content relevant to design, which is currently contained in the MCHW. This content will be identified and migrated to the DMRB, particularly to the design row of the DMRB. So you will see through document development, through the documents you will be reviewing, that there are also some DMRB clauses or new DMRB documents which have been created to contain such information relevant to designers. Finally, some of the health and safety content, which is now in volume 6, will move to the health and safety documents. The second practical implication for you to be aware of is in relation to the style and format of volumes 1 and 2. On this slide, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen a table of content relevant for the SHW, and on the right-hand side the notes for guidance. And there is normally a relationship between the two. When you start looking at the specific content in these documents, you will realize that in some cases there is a direct relationship between clauses, but in other cases there isn't. And you can also notice that there are paragraphs full of text which can contain multiple requirements, or in the case of notes for guidance, multiple notes. The third component of this system of contract information is provided on this slide, and this is given by the contract-specific appendices, which are appendices to the notes for guidance, which in turn refers to the SHW. The content and presentation of the SHW will be very different. The figures on this slide provides an example of the content for the specification for highways works in future. Firstly, the SHW requirements will be split out, so we'll no longer have long paragraphs and multiple requirements in the same clause. And secondly, the SHW requirements will only cover products, materials, and activities related to products and materials like aspects related to installation and workmanship requirements, verification requirements, and documentation requirements. The notes for guidance will also change significantly. Perhaps the change in the notes for guidance will be even more significant than the one in the specification for highways works. They will change in terms of scope and in terms of structure. Specifier instructions will be aligned with the SHW requirements and only included where the SHW requirements refer to the work-specific inputs, as you can see in this example. The style is also very different from the type of clauses that were used in the notes for guidance. You notice that the specifier instruction SI 1.2 presents a very different style, is much more concise, and it is directly related to the relevant constructor requirement. For ease of use by specifiers, instructions for specifiers documents will be published with both the default set of constructor requirements for the SHW and the specifier instructions on providing the required work-specific inputs. But the specifier is not expected to adhere to the constructor requirements, but these are provided for information only. So, in short, compared to the current situation, the instruction for specifier documents, which will replace the notes for guidance, will be provided, the instructions will be provided in line with the relevant constructor requirements. It will be everything in one document, and they will have a completely different style. The contract-specific appendices, which were the current appendices in the notes for guidance, will be replaced by the work-specific inputs, WSI. This will be aligned with the specifier instructions. Work will also start very soon to explore the features of a tool that can generate the WSI schedules automatically, and this is called the specifier tool. You will probably be hearing about this term quite a lot over the next few months. To summarize what I've presented in terms of a new style and format of the MCHW and also the new volume structure, it's useful to look at this table, which provides the key changes in terminology. So the current term specification for highways works series will be replaced by SHW documents. We no longer call them series. Requirements for constructors in the SHW will become constructor requirements, which is very, very similar. Notes for guidance documents will become instructions for specifier documents. But importantly, the guidance for contract compiler, which is currently in the notes for guidance in volume 2, will become design requirements and advice in the DMRB as relevant, and there are a lot of examples of content in the notes for guidance which is more relevant to designers than to the specifier, because it is about design decisions, not decisions that are taken by the specifier anyway. Some of the content contained in volume 2 will then become specifier instructions and following the structure that I showed you earlier. And in very few cases there are also constructor requirements, so requirements which are relevant to the constructor, and they will end up in the SHW. And finally, as I just mentioned in the previous slide, the contract-specific appendices in the notes for guidance will become work-specific inputs. So I did talk to you about the new style of clauses, the new volume structure, but it's also useful to show you the new format of clauses, both in the SHW and the instruction for specifier documents. We have introduced standard format requirements for the SHW, which provide a consistent structure to refer to similar requirements, which also helps readability and rigor. So we have identified a list of standard format requirements, which covers, for example, how to present documentation, verification requirements, how to refer to product specifications, and so on. And the technical authors will be selecting such standard format requirements from CARS where available, and will be using them, will populate such requirements with the relevant information. So when you will see the content provided in the MCHW documents in future, you will find a lot of these standard format requirements being used. Similarly, for the specifier instructions, we have also introduced some standard format instructions in this case. Again, they provide a consistent structure to present information for the specifier. And importantly, the new format supports automation in the production of the schedule of WSI and helps establish a clear link between constructor requirements, specifier instructions, and WSI, the work-specific inputs. So far, I have presented two of the key practical implications for the evolution of the MCHW. I presented the volume structure of the MCHW and the new style and format of volumes 1 and 2. The last aspect I'd like to cover is about national variations, so how this content is presented in the new MCHW. In future, national variations will be called nationally determined requirements, NDR, or nationally determined sections, NDSs. And this depends on whether there is a limited small variation, which can be presented at requirement level with the NDR, or significant variation, which will require an entire section to be presented. So you can see here that both NDR and NDSs are supported by CARS. And in particular for the NDRs, they are created for each overseeing organizations, and they are authored in line and kept together with core requirements in CARS. In terms of NDSs, nationally determined requirements, these are created at section level, and again, the overseeing organizations can change the content as needed. But importantly, all content in an NDS shall relate to the same subject across the 4 organizations, and all NDSs related to the specific subject shall have the same title. So key takeaways from this session are that the MCHW will have a completely different structure and content. The SHW constructor requirements will be rationalized to cover products, materials, and activities related to products and materials. I'm talking about installation and workmanship requirements, as well as documentation and verification requirements, for example. The SHW constructor requirements will be presented using standard format requirements where available on CARS. The notes for guidance in Volume 2 will change significantly, both in terms of scope and structure. Some of the content in the notes for guidance will go into the DMRB when covering design information, and other content will be rephrased as specifier instructions. The specifier instructions will be aligned with the SHW requirements and only included where the SHW requirements refers to work-specific inputs. The specifier instructions will be presented using standard format, which I presented earlier, and national variations will be called nationally determined requirements, NDR, or nationally determined sections, NDSs, as relevant. In the last session of this training, I will summarize the key responsibilities of the TSC as a whole and of the consultees. Such content is provided within MDD Part 1, version 6, which was released on the 22nd of March. The MDD has been entirely reviewed and made more user-friendly, with text largely replaced by workflows showing the steps and the owners of the actions. On this slide, you can see an example covering the steps for TSC consultations. We have also added icons to help visualize different roles and responsibilities. The key responsibilities of the TSC as a whole are provided on this slide, which is extracted from MDD Part 1. I will not go into the details of this, but I just want to flag that overall the TSC is responsible for ensuring that the document meets policies and objectives of the overseeing organizations. It is technically correct and reflects good practice in the industry. And when I say it's technically correct and up to date, it also means that it takes account of other relevant standards and regulations in the EU, UK, and at national level. The TSC as a whole should also assess and comment on the impacts that the document is likely to have, and specific focus here is on reviewing the impact assessment report and providing relevant comments depending on the specific area of expertise and remit of the consultee. There are also information that have to be provided around financial and operational risks. It's important that the TSC as a whole provides and completes the review of the document within the assigned timescale. And finally, takes account and maintain good contact with research and construction organizations in the EU and also worldwide. Key responsibilities of consultees are provided in MDD Part 1. This contains responsibilities, general responsibilities of the consultees, as you can see on the screen, and also specific responsibilities for editorial, technical, and concurrence consultees. I will not read in details this slide, but I just want to flag that overall there are 4 key responsibilities to be flagged here in terms of active and timely participation during the consultation process. Importantly, there needs to be communication of other commitments to the TSC chair and secretary so that it's possible to understand the level of participation and also define the deadline for the consultation process in an appropriate way. There needs to be another responsibility here in terms of internal consultation that the consultees should have within their own group or organization to feedback into the consultation process. And finally, they are expected to review and comment on governance deliverables. And I did present before the specific comments to be provided on the draft document and on the impact assessment report. We are now at the end of this presentation, so let me provide some key remarks. When I started this training, I showed you this slide with the outcomes from today. So I hope that by the end of this training session, you understand the objectives of the new governance process and how major revisions and incremental changes will be managed in the new governance process. You also understand the scope and content of the new governance deliverables and how you can review and comment on them. I'm talking about here the impact assessment report, document development plan, draft document, change log, and close change summary. I do hope that you understand how the TSC functions and your role as consultee. You also understand why and how the MCHW is evolving so that you can make relevant comments, and you are ready to support the implementation of the new standard governance process for the MRB and MCHW. The new standards governance process, including the technical standard committee's approach, went live on the 22nd of March. So all epics in TPB review onwards continue in the standard forward program, which is the current workflow until publication, whereas all the epics prior to the TPB review were moved to the new standards review program, the SRP, and they are now subject to the new standards governance process, so effectively to the distinction between different categories of change, A, B, C, and D. In terms of support to implementation, the key components of the technical standard enterprise system, JIRA, CARS, but also the index manager and the website have been updated to accommodate the proposed mandatory stages in the governance process for different types of authoring activities. We have also developed new templates for governance deliverables, which I presented you today. We have training slides available for all parties, TSC chairs, secretaries, technical authors and consultees. TAG staff is available to answer any queries, and the MDD has also been updated. So what you need to do now is to familiarize with the new standards governance process and also the new deliverables by reviewing previous slides and the new MDD content, and also provide any feedback to your relevant TSC chair or to TAG, including your experience and suggestions for improvement. And I will give you the key TAG contacts in the next slide. For any queries or feedback, please contact TAG. Kurt and Becky will provide support and answer any questions. In terms of feedback on this training session, please email myself, Maria Pia Angelino, and I will also be happy to take on board any comments you will make on this presentation and update the slides accordingly. Thank you very much for your attention and support. I hope you found this presentation useful, interesting, and I just want to say thank you because you have an important role as consultees in the success of the new technical standard committee process, as well as in the success and the quality of the deliverables. So I'm talking about the MRB and MCHW documents. So thank you again.